Good morning. It is wonderful to see all of your bright, smiling faces. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Erin Hart, and I am the brand new chair of the Children's Religious Education Committee. So, and thank you to Lane Craig for all her help in the past. So the story I'm going to read you today is called You May Say I'm a Dreamer, and it's by Kim Sweeney. My love for the Beatles goes back for as long as I can remember. I remember singing songs with my mom and flipping through all of my dad's records as a child. We sang Beatles songs in our school chorus, and I had posters all over my wall by junior high. In high school, I pored over their lyrics and read them like poetry. As a young adult, I heard a Beatles song played in the first UU congregation I stepped foot in, and I chose Beatles songs to be played in my wedding. I cannot remember a time in my life that was not influenced by the music of the Beatles. As a young parent, I introduced my children to the Beatles on the very days they were born. Haley was wrapped in a blanket designed by drawings John Lennon had sketched for his own son, and she could identify each of the Fab Four by name before she turned 2. Her Yellow Submarine birthday party was a big hit for people of all ages. Abby may have been named after a certain album, and the framed album cover would hang in her room. She would often fall asleep to soft acoustic versions of Beatles songs and would look at children's books about these musicians. The drive to church on Sunday mornings would be timed perfectly with Beatles' brunch radio show. My children cannot remember a time in their lives when the influence of the Beatles was not present. This past summer, I attended an international interfaith conference focused on bringing the generations together in church. One particular workshop was focused on our youngest members, those under the age of 3. It was suggested that early childhood ministry is the most important ministry of the church that nobody is talking about. Children learn more in their first 6 years of life than the rest of their entire lives. So those other 94 years of acquired wisdom pale in comparison to what you learned when you were a toddler. Seriously. Babies learn how to use an entire language simply by being around us. Most of our children will learn to understand and use the language or languages they are exposed to before they ever attend school. In their first 4 years, the average child will learn up to 45,000 words. How many of those words are from the language of our faith? This is the time when developmentally we are most ripe for learning, and it is the most common age group to be excluded from our worship entirely. What would happen if, as a congregation, we raised our infants and toddlers to be in worship with us every Sunday, where they were routinely exposed to that language? What if, as a congregation, we developed religious literacy right from the start so that our children never remembered a time when they were not influenced by a part of our community of faith? I listened to my interfaith colleagues share stories of how they welcomed and ministered to the youngest among them. I heard about the congregation who hired a nursery care provider to sit and interact with the toddlers and worship each Sunday in a designated space in the front of the sanctuary, replete with quiet activities that were connected to the theme of the service. I heard story after story of what it has meant to have babies, toddlers, and small children not only in worship, but in small group ministry, fellowship, and learning as well. I've been attending these interfaith gatherings for over a decade now. We have had so many similar challenges and goals in bringing our generations together more fully in congregational life. But this year, for the first time, I wept. I wept because 10 years later, our interfaith colleagues had made marked progress where ours had been minimal at best. I wept because when I shared that our norm was to have our youngest in the nursery, while our school-age children were with us for 10 to 15 minutes of worship each week, our interfaith partners could not disguise their looks of absolute disbelief. Our children will absorb and learn from their environment and experiences. My home has 2 generations of women who cannot remember a time when the Beatles did not provide the soundtrack of their lives. As we consider the future of faith formation and the future of Unitarian Universalism, I pray that the next 2 generations will not be able to remember a time in their lives that did not include the music and words of our faith, the scent of flickering candles, the embrace of community, and the experience of being known and loved. Thank you. At this time, I would like to call all the youth and teens and children to the front. Please stand up and face the congregation. We are going to do a reading called "We Are a Gift." Please join the children in reading the projected.
We are a gift. Your laughter is a gift. It reminds us to find joy throughout our day. We are a gift.
Your energy is a gift. The life of the church is not static, but moves.
We are a gift.
Your presence is a gift. We have a fuller, more connected congregation because you are here.
We are a gift.
Your participation is a gift. By adding your voice to a song and by adding to the conversation, our perspective is widened and our understanding deeper. Thank you. You may all be seated.
My name is Leanne Maxwell. I have had the pleasure of being the committee chair for the CRE as well, and I am again on the committee, and I just lost my stuff. Oh my goodness, that's not awesome. Oh, and there's no internet, so here we go. I was asked to talk to y'all today about my thoughts on having children in the worship service. I have 2 kids. Walker helped this morning with the readings of the children, the Story for All Ages, as well as the offertory thought or offering, and Finley helped with the being a greeter this morning. Having children be a part of the service is really important to me. I grew up in a church not too far from here where kids were in the service from a very young age. Yes, we were loud. Our kids are going to be loud. Yes, we were fidgety. Our kids are going to be fidgety. Yes, we were bored. Kids are going to be bored. Some of the adults are bored too. But all of that does not mean that they can't be a part of the service. Part of the reason why Spencer and I joined this church was for our kids. We came here because we wanted our kids to grow up with a church family and a community that was bigger than just the 4 people in our home. Yes, we have loving families and extended families and friends, but there is something wonderful about being a part of a church family where you get to be with people of all different ages and generations. I had that when I was growing up, and it was really important for me to have that for my children. So I feel like when we invite children into the service, we are also inviting their parents. That's why we first came, was for our kids. Along the way, we have also found belonging here, and we have also found a place for ourselves. I had a list of 12 reasons why we should have kids in our service. It was also by Miss Sweeney, who has done a lot of work in this area. She says that kids have a lot to offer for us. She says that that they can offer a lot to the service. I've seen mamas rocking babies today. I've seen hugs. I've seen kisses. I've seen kids be a part of different elements of our worship service. That is such a gift for us to be able to see that. Some of us have children of our own. Some of us have grandchildren that may be living far away. Some of us don't have kids yet at all. But we can all see the value and the wonder of bringing kids into the service, and we all get a little bit out of it. I really appreciate being able to share this time with our kids. For me, I grew up in the Christian faith, and so I know a whole lot about that faith because I was in the worship service from a very young age. But the first time we came here, that'd be great. Thanks. The first time we came here, Walker was about 2 and Finley was about 6 months old, and we were immediately shown the nursery, which was very polite. And then Finley stayed in the service with us because she was about 6 months old, and she was loud for the whole service. And after the service, I left feeling like this isn't the place for us right now. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like we shouldn't, our kids are too loud, they're too young, and they are just not ready for this. We came back about a year later, and we did join the church, and we got really involved, but again, I was wondering, where are all the kids? And so I got involved with the CRE, and, oh goodness. Thanks. No, it's gone. It's okay. I can do it without it. I got involved with CRE, and then suddenly I was pulled out of the service. So I, as an adult, was no longer able to be in the service because I was working with children's religious programming. And so not only were my kids not involved, but I was no longer involved. And we had just joined the UU Church and didn't really know very much about the faith or about the traditions or about the sources, about what it all meant. And so I feel like I am lacking in my learning, but then as Aaron just read from Kim Sweeney, our children were lacking in their learning too. Yes, our programming for kids is great, and our kids have learned a lot. But I'm not in all of their classes every time, so I don't know everything they're learning. With a shared time, we can learn the same things. They may not understand everything that Sherry or our other speakers have to say, but we'll get the opportunity as parents to continue that conversation at home. Also, as a person who has tried to get volunteers for 2 different class periods, basically, of teachers, it's really difficult. There's a lot of great parents and teachers and community members in our congregation, but a lot of times they have to choose between going to the service or teaching, or going to 2 services so that they can attend one service and do children's religious education at one. And that's a really big task to ask those parents to come and stay here for 3.5 hours on a Sunday, just so that they can participate in religious education, but also so that they can participate in the worship service with our larger community. So I think it would be nice if we had a service where everyone could attend and then had our Sunday school or religious education time in between so that parents and other members of our congregation who are teaching could be a part of both. Opportunities that our speakers have to share a message or a reflection that meets the needs of not just one population of our church is great. Sherry's going to get to have lots of opportunities and lots of challenges to make sure that her service, her words don't just meet somebody up here, but they meet people down here too. Our church works really hard to be inclusive. That's one of the reasons why Spencer and I chose this congregation, is because of inclusivity and how important that is. We work really hard to include all sorts of different kinds of people. We're working on our AIM certification right now from the UUA, which is our Accessibility and Inclusivity Ministry. But lots of the stuff that we do is to include adults. And now it would be nice if we took a time to include children as well. There's lots of different sources that I looked at of our faith to talk about today's service. But one of the things that I feel like was most important was to think about what Gandhi says about peacemaking begins with the children. We can't expect our children to grow up to be peacemakers or to grow up to be contributing members of our congregation if we don't teach them how to do that from a young age. And they learn that by participating in our service on a weekly basis. Often parents are left with the choice between, do we attend church and then be separated from our kids, or do we stay home on Sundays and be with our kids? This would give those families an opportunity to be around their kids and participate in our faith community. The last thing that I want to say is, well, there's two more things, sorry. The last two things that I want to say are this. Having those relationships with adults that weren't my parents was really pivotal in my experience growing up in the church that I did. I had adults who helped shape who I am today, helped me learn confidence, helped me learn what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I want that for my own children too. I see the energy and the spark that both of my kids have, and I know that Spencer and I are not the only two people that can cultivate those sparks. And I would love to be able to draw on the wealth of knowledge and the wealth of energy and the wealth of expertise that's here within this community, that you guys can help cultivate the spark and energy of all of our children too. The last thing that I want to say is Crazy Horse says that we did not inherit the earth from our forefathers and our parents, but we are borrowing it from our kids. That's not an exact quote, but that's my interpretation of the quote. I feel like we are borrowing Westside from our kids. We all want to see Westside continue into the future. And it's not going to continue in the future if we don't realize that we are building this for our kids and we're borrowing it from them. And it would be lovely if we could share it with them while we have the chance. Thank you.
So during the offertory, we heard the music of Rafi Kavukian, beloved children's performer. Rafi's music was at its peak of popularity during the formative years of my childhood, and I truly believe Rafi's messages, such as the importance of love and togetherness and the sacredness of our planet, played a fundamental role in my world outlook and my eventual call to this work of Unitarian Universalism. Additionally, Rafi went on to become a children's advocate for the United Nations and helped found the National Center for Child Honoring, the core tenets of which you can find in your orders of service. I want to echo Leanne's sentiments that it's my wish for Westside to truly become a children's church. If we make church work for our youngest, it works from the bottom up. And as we'll find out, the same thing doesn't work from the top down. So I invite you all to contemplate this radical question. What would our church be like if children were at the center of everything we do? I believe that our future, both the future of Unitarian Universalism and the future of our planet, literally depends on it. And Rafi's going to tell us why.
could be more important than a newborn's first impressions of life to be positive and affirming? What could be more important than that? There are lifelong consequences of early years and early experience, and that's worth singing a song about. And I'm going to do that right now. Play that song. What does it take for a baby girl to grow up good and strong? What does it take for a baby girl? What does it take for a baby boy to grow up full of love? What does it take for a baby boy? It takes a village. It takes a village to raise. It takes a village to raise a child. Sing it with me, come on. It takes a village. No one can do it alone. It takes a village to raise a child. Very nice. In the early years of life, what does a newborn need to be whole, to thrive in every way? Do, 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 do. In these crucial early years, when the brain is growing and the love for a lifetime takes hold. It takes a village. It takes a village to raise. It takes a village to raise a child, yeah. Raise a child. It takes a village. No one can do it alone. It takes a village to raise a child. Not just the parents' love, not just love of the family. It takes all of this and more. Not just teachers who care, not just the care of doctors. It takes all of this and more. How about the love of the farmers? How about the business people?
Yeah.
How about the people who pass the laws? How about your corner grocer? How about your next door neighbor?
Yeah.
It takes all of this and more.
It takes a village.
It takes a village to raise.
It takes a village
To raise a child. Yeah, sing it with me. It takes a village. No one can do it alone.
No, no.
It takes a village to raise a child. One more time, I want to hear you. Come on now. It takes a village. It takes a village to raise. It takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. It takes a village. No one can do it alone.
It takes a village
To raise a child. It takes a village. It takes a village to raise. It takes a village to raise a child. Thank you. I sang that at the World Bank in 2000. They had their first ever Investing in Early Childhood Development conference, and I sang that. And someone came up to me in a three-piece suit, and he said, "Thank you for singing to us. Nobody ever does." True story. So it's not just a social revolution we need in the world, but an ecological shift. We need a new consciousness for respecting earth and child simultaneously. And we need to educate for sustainability in every land. This is the moment where we make the connections. Mother and child, Earth and her children, we're 70% water. We are a majesty and a grandeur. That's what being human is all about. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, the song says, but there's nothing small about the infinite human spirit. We are a powerhouse. And unless we know our power to be for good and for loving, it atrophies into a whole host of habitual afflictions. That's why I want society to understand the word formative and how important it is. And by child honoring, I'm not talking about a world where children rule or permissive parenting. None of that is desirable, but I'm talking about respect for personhood right from the beginning, so that you feel seen and respected for who you feel you are, so you may have a chance to grow in harmony and not feel conflicted as you grow, looking to be seen and loved by acting out in all kinds of ways. So we're talking about raising earth stewards, responsible citizens, productive individuals in our societies. That's who you want walking down the streets of your community, isn't it? That's what we're talking about. And all babies depend on Mother Nature. You were once a baby who came from your mother's womb, your first environment. And you came onto and into nature's womb, a womb with a view. But we live on a planet in peril, as CNN calls it, folks. And we need, for the baby's sake, for the sake of the infant of every culture, who I call the universal human, because all babies and infants are the same biological creature, regardless of race, skin color, language, ethnicity. So for the universal human, we need a thorough detoxification of not only their physical world, but the environments in which they live and learn and grow. And child honoring is the name I give to the positive, integrated vision that would advance the honoring of children as a universal ethic in the world. That would suggest a unifying principle. The adorable infant of every culture, the same biological being, the universal human, inspires in us a unifying principle for societal change. You make the world work for the infant, and it works all the way on up. The reverse isn't true. Infants are uniquely impressionable, susceptible, and vulnerable to family dynamics, cultural values, and planetary conditions. So the developing intelligence of our young in the formative years can inspire us with a new template for how far we need to go to shake things up in this world, and for a compassionate revolution in values in every sector of society. And that, to me, is the heart of what's going on in the world right now. In so many lands where people are claiming a different possible world they know is within our grasp. And I would say to you that what we're talking about is nothing less than redesigning society for the greatest good. If you think about the generations that are affected by one person, if you think about the ripple in the big pond that goes out in all directions, one person's heart healed from early trauma, or better yet, that doesn't have that early trauma, who can navigate life's waters in rich, resourceful ways with confidence. A world where self-confidence trumps consumer confidence. A world where we shift from a bottom-line culture where money rules to a triple bottom-line culture where you have fiscal, social, and environmental responsibility all working together. For the many, all working together for the many, for all the world's children. Are you with me? So folks, I would say that we are the roots and shoots of a living world. Every one of us. And I would echo Jack Layton's words, love is better than anger. Love is your nature. Hope is better than fear. You are the hope for humanity. Each of you, not someone else. You are the hope for humanity. And optimism is better than despair, for your love in action is the hope that melts despair, the hope that grows optimism and moves dreams into being. So let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic. Take a vow to honor the child. Make a new covenant to respect earth and child. Tend the primary garden of being so that it can nurture the whole of our global ecology. Turn this world around for the children, for the more we get together, the happier we'll be.
It takes a Unitarian Universalist village to raise a Unitarian Universalist. We will read what we believe important for our children and youth to learn, to know, and to experience. We invite you to respond by saying, "It takes a village," and we'll gesture when it's your turn.
It is important for our young people to know they are cared for, to know that they are part of a larger family, an important part of the bigger human picture.
It takes a village. It is important for our children and youth to believe in themselves, to trust in themselves, to know that they can make a difference. It takes a village.
It is important for our children and youth to know our Unitarian Universalist principles, to find ways to live them in their daily lives, and to realize that the choices they make are important.
It takes a village. It is important for our young people to be able to speak about our faith, to honor its history and its heritage, and to appreciate its heroes and heroines. It takes a village.
It is important for our children and youth to explore religious truth and meaning in the Jewish, Christian, and other world religions, and to know that ours is a religion worth having.
It takes a village. It is important for our children and youth to experience the spirit of life, to feel a sense of awe at the grandeur of the world, and to live lives of empathy and compassion. It takes a village. Thank you.
Our time together this morning may be ending, but your adventure is just beginning. Sometimes we have to say goodbye. Say goodbye to boring. Say goodbye to apathy. Say goodbye so you can start saying hello to some really awesome stuff. It's time to say hello to possibility. It's time to say hello to hope. The greatest superpower that we all have is the ability to change the future. Changing stuff can be hard, but we got to do it. You might not think you can change anything, but you can. You will, just by being you. Some days it'll seem tough. It'll seem like you're not getting anywhere. But every single day, You are adding a note to what ends up to be a big piece of music. Other people are making music too. Together, we're all making a big song, and it's a really good one. It's the kind of song that makes you want to dance and reminds you why dancing is awesome in the first place. Maybe you've been waiting for someone to say this, so I'll say it. It's okay. You can be awesome. Seriously, go be awesome. The world needs more little notes adding to the music. It's time. As you leave this space, may you carry the awesome love and generosity of this community with you today and every day. Blessed be, and amen.